everybody. Welcome back to our channel, Learning the Bible and More. My name is Stacy, and so we are reading and learning about when faith is forbidden. This is a story about 40 days. The author, I think throughout the years, he compiled and witnessed how faith is forbidden in other countries. It's about Christian persecution, which is happening, and we want to learn how we deal with it. And so just to catch you up here, so yesterday I had to go to the dentist and finish a root canal. Fun stuff. So I'm a little bit swollen there. It's kind of painful, but I will live. So some good news, with my disabled son who's in the Utah prison. So I found out because of his disability, I can try to get his sentence commuted, which means to lower the sentence. And so I've been working on that. And so, but just keep everybody in prayer. And God just answers our prayers when the timing is right. And so I hope everybody's having a great day. And let's just hop on in. Let's find out. Because this is this one, it says, I almost drowned while taking a shower. Wow. Okay, so in Matthew chapter 14, verse 30 through 31, it reads, But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. And whenever you kind of get the creeps, or because we know evil is all around, and us, the people that are doing good and have a good heart, we get those vibes, or I sure do. And so you want to cry out, to Lord, to save you. And so Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And so Hussein, part 1, undisclosed country, back in 2009. So Hussein is not his real name. He lives in Iran, but we met in another country willing to grant visas to both Iranians and Americans. Hussein grew up in a strict Islamic home. His mother was a devout Muslim, reading the Quran and praying 5 times each day in the prescribed fashion. His father was not a devout, but if anyone suggested he wasn't a very good Muslim, he would become angry, even violent. He beat Hussein's mother. Their marriage teetered on the brink of divorce. And after completing mandatory military service, Hussein returned home. Jobs were hard to come by. Instead of finding one, he joined an old friend in counterfeiting operation, a crime punishable by death under Iran's strict penal system. But he and his friend didn't get caught, and Hussein's income went up and up and up. His was a life of debauchery, women, drugs, parties. Such activities might numb his pain for a moment, but none filled the emptiness he sensed inside himself. He and his friend had a disagreement, and Hussein found himself out of the counterfeiting business. Suddenly, his income was 0, but his drug addiction didn't end when his income did. Hussein was miserable. He began to make plans to kill himself. I wanted to die, he told me, but I didn't want it to hurt. He decided to get a high on ecstasy and then jump off the roof of a tall building. He found an appropriate building and even a way to sneak up to the building's roof. Now all he needed was the drugs. While he was looking for this final score, an old army buddy called Hussein. He would be visiting Hussein's town and hoped to meet up over coffee. Hussein's buddy said he had found something new. Hussein's ears perked up. What he thought he heard was that his friend had discovered a new drug. And Hussein was certainly looking for drugs. Instead, his friend told him he had found Christ, that a friend sent Hussein a New Testament, and he read the book of Matthew, but the first reading didn't make much sense to him. When his friend came back to town, he brought other Christians to meet Hussein. They met him in a local park on a beautiful sunny day. One of them, a woman named Padina, had also struggled with drugs and depression and had also made a plan to kill herself. The Christians really listened to Hussein and sympathized with the pain in his life. Looking him right in the eye, Padina asked if Hussein would like to give him his pain to Jesus. Hussein didn't feel like he had anything to lose. If Jesus didn't work out, he reasoned, he could still decide to kill himself. Why not pray with them? What could it hurt? But when he prayed to Jesus and asked him to take control of his life and to take all his pain, something amazing happened. Instantly, he felt lighter. Hussein told me that he felt unexplainable happiness after praying to receive Christ. Hussein's life began to charge. He quit drugs, drinking, and cigarettes. Seeing the dramatic change in his life, both his brother and sister accepted Christ. Church leaders noticed Hussein's witness and identified him as a potential leader in the church. Hussein sensed God's call to further ministry. He fought against it, though trying hard to tune it out. With God's help, he'd beaten addiction and rebuilt his life. He had a good legal job. He had a car and a house. He was willing to serve the Lord, partly. Couldn't he serve the Lord and keep his comfort and steady income? The church group could even meet at his house. 18 months later, Hussein was part of a group of Christians that went on a retreat to the sea. The sea wasn't really Hussein's favorite spot. He told me sarcastically just how good a swimmer he is. I almost drowned just taking a shower. But as he stood on the beautiful beach, the water seemed calm and shallow, and he stepped in. And he then stepped out a little farther, and a little farther still. The tide dragged him out, and Hussein found himself underwater. Clawing for the surface, terrified in his panic, he slightly cried out to God, admitting that he didn't want to die because he had never answered that call to work wholly for him. The man who planned to jump off a tall building now didn't want to die without answering God's call. God answered his prayer. Hussein described it like feeling hands lift him up to the surface and hold his head out of the water. Seeing his panic, 3 lifeguards went in and pulled him out, saving his life. Afterward, as he shivered in a blanket on the beach, they told him, "We could see that you had your head up out of the water, so we knew you were a strong swimmer. If you hadn't been such a strong swimmer, we never would have gone after you because you would have dragged us down." Hussein just looked at them. He was thankful for their help, but he knew what had really happened. God had saved him from certain death. Hussein answered God's call to full-time ministry. When he first told the church leaders, they told him he was emotional from his near-death experience. They advised he wait and pray about it for a few weeks before making a final decision. Hussein instead Hussein insisted that he was ready to give up everything to serve the Lord. He quit his job even after his boss offered him a promotion. He sold his car and paid his debts and prepared for a new life. The leaders saw his resolve and began his training. For 30 days, he went out with the church leader and his wife, simply watching what they did. Immediately, God began to confirm Hussein's call. As they walked into one house where they were ministering, the daughter in the family began to cry. When she calmed down, she told them that the night before she saw Christ in her dream, and he led her to a table where she sat down with 3 people, and now those same 3 people had come into her home for her. It was a confirmation of the truth of the gospel. For Hussein is what a confirmation that God had called him and would bless his ministry. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so let's jump over to, so we're on day 5 now. And this one is called, Which one of those is bad? And so this is Philippians chapter 1, verse 19 through 21. For I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance, as it is in my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but that full courage now as always Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. So Hussein, this is part 2 in an undisclosed country back in 2009, which 2009 was just a crazy year because that was the year my youngest was in a near fatal car accident, and it was recorded that he died 3 times. And, he was in coma for 20 days. And, you fast forward 5 months later and, he remembers meeting Jesus. But anyway, let's just read about Hussein. And so the ministry in Iran comes with a cost. And it wasn't many months into his full-time ministry life that Hussein was holding a Bible study in an apartment when police raided. Hussein and the believers had just received a shipment of 500 Bibles stacked in 3 large boxes in one of the rooms. The police searched the entire apartment and threw everything in the middle of the living room floor. Even pictures were pulled off the wall and thrown into a pile. Hussein said one of the policemen even picked up a needle and lodged between 2 floorboards. Yet miraculously, they did not notice 3 large boxes. So they were like poking for, oh, that's scary. So the Bible sitting in the middle of the bedroom. And so police still arrested Hussein and his 2 female co-workers. They drove him to a large prison, then blindfolded him, put him in another car, and drove him somewhere else. Hussein was wondering what to say and questioning a bit why he'd given up his good job and comfortable life. The guards led him to a solitary confinement cell, which measured 10 feet by 6 feet, a huge floodlight that lit the room for 24 hours a day. When Hussein asked to turn it off, the guard said, "What do you think this is, a hotel?" Hussein's mind was raging a storm of questions. What had his female co-workers admitted? What should he tell police? How long would he be held? And what would his parents think when they learned their son was in prison? Sitting on the hard floor in that solitary cell, Hussein encountered Jesus Christ. Hussein told me he heard God speak the same way you or I hear water running when he turned on the faucet. He said, I felt like Jesus was put everything aside, the whole world aside, to come to me and whisper in my ear. Hussein began to pray. All his desperate questions faded away. God's peace filled him completely, filled up the entire cell. He sensed Christ asking him, why are you worrying about what you're going to say? There's no need for you to decide what to say because I'm going to tell you what to say. Hussein's fear was gone. Interrogation began. Hussein had prayed he wouldn't have to lie, and God arranged so he could answer every question truthfully. He was interrogated every day, but none of the policemen ever asked if he was a Christian. If he'd actually left Islam to follow Christ, when they asked about the Bibles, Hussein assumed they'd found the 500 Bibles he knew were in the bedroom at the apartment. But he was careful how he answered their questions, trying to say as little as possible. Later, he learned the interrogators were talking only about the 2 Bibles in his backpack. After a few days, he was taken to court. He stood before the judge, and like the interrogators, the judge never asked him if he was a Christian. Hussein was returned to solitary confinement, where he would spend a total of 10 days. There was no bed, and at night, guards would throw water into his cell to make the floor wet, so Hussein couldn't lay down and sleep. After another week, they transferred Hussein to a regular prison and sent him to a level 11. He learned that level 11 was for death row prisoners. When he got there, the guard said, don't bring him here. The other prisoners will kill him. But the paperwork said level 11. The guard opened the gate. Hussein went in, then the guard closed it. Hussein was behind the gate amidst 250 death row inmates. The guard was on the other side of the gate. Behind the gate, Hussein learned prisoners run everything. The entire death row area is controlled by a gang. We know that happens in America, but it's sad that it also happens in other countries. Why do they allow the gangs to rule over everything? It doesn't make any sense when you think about it, but if you think deeper into it, then I guess it does make sense. So Hussein prayed and wondered what to do. That night, leaders of the gang ordered him to come with them. He was frightened, imagining terrible things they were about to do with him. But God was working. Somehow the gang leaders had heard that Hussein had contacts in America. They wanted him to tell the outside world how terrible the conditions were in the prison. By the end of the meeting, Hussein had been accepted into the leadership of the gang, one of the top 8 leaders out of the 250 death row inmates. He slept on the top bunk his very first night on death row, when people who had been there 5 years were still sleeping on the floor. He had a private shower. He had fresh fruit and vegetables every day. He was in charge of distributing water to all the prisoners. Were nice to him because they wanted to be sure to get their allotment of water. God not only protected Hussein, he put him into a position of authority. Perhaps you want to pause here and read or reread the story of Joseph in Genesis. And I'm getting teary-eyed because my disabled son is in prison, and we had to look at it as, God is using him. And it's true, because when my son had a prayer group and he ended up having at least 30 inmates in his prayer group, because I told my son, I go, you have to tell your story because people don't believe. And my son said, I know, Mom. And so it's true, you can choose to either let negativity consume you, or you can turn it around and use, bad for good. And so, I mean, yeah, it hurts, to know that people use you or whatever, but all we can do is pray for those people. And so anyway, so Hussein said death row was like a hotel to him. 2 days after he arrived, the guard offered him a transfer to a safer part of the prison. Hussein turned it down, saying he'd rather stay on death row. He spent 10 days there, then was released on bond. He still had to come back to that city for the court hearing. But when he did, he found God working there too. When Hussein entered the courtroom, the judge, wearing the long beard of a devout Muslim cleric, looked furious. But when Hussein's case came up, the judge's countenance changed. Hussein showed him the appeal document, and the judge said, "No, this is wrong. Let me change it." He literally filled out Hussein's appeal document. The judge told Hussein the procedure to file the appeal, where to go to file the documents, and where to deliver them. And he said if Hussein had any trouble, to just give him a call, and he'd help move things along. Later, the judge told Hussein he didn't even have to show up for the court hearings. The judge would take care of it. Miracle, 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 miracle. It seemed that at every step of Hussein's spiritual journey, God had a miracle waiting. I asked Hussein if in light of these miracles, he was ever afraid. "No," he said. "I've seen God work so many times already. What do I have to fear?" Hussein is continuing in ministry in Iran. He knows there will be other encounters with police. I asked if he was worried. I think one of the two things will happen. Hussein told me they will either kill me or there will be another miraculous event like these. Then he smiled and asked, "Which one of those is bad?" He's not worried because he's like, it's not bad. It's a good thing. So we're going to stop there. When we come back, we'll be on day 6, and it'll be about the hope that kept him strong. And so these are fun, true stories that actually happen. It's fun to learn about it, and it's fun to know, how God assisted them along the way, as he still does. And so remember to always put God first. He does patiently wait for us to reach out to him, repent, and he answers our prayers when the timing is right. So have a great day, everyone, and just enjoy life. So to be continued.